Welcome to the Innovative Revenue Leader podcast. I'm your host, Seth Marrs. Join me as we deliver practical insights to help B2B CROs find new and innovative ways to grow in this fast-changing environment. The Innovative Revenue Leader is sponsored by Sandler, a Trilliad company, empowering sales professionals and leaders to master the craft of selling at all levels. Welcome back to the Innovative Revenue Leader podcast. Over the past few months, we've been exploring one of the biggest shifts happening in B2B revenue right now, the rise of AI agents. Not just as a feature or a buzzword, but a real change to how work gets done across go-to-market teams. At least that's the intent. So in this special episode, we're bringing together insights from 4 incredible conversations with Laura from HighSpot, Sahil from Vaughn, Nithya from Outreach, and Joe from Vivint, each offering a different perspective on what agents are, how they're being built, and what they mean for the future of revenue. One thing that became very clear across all is that we're moving from tools that support work to systems that actually do work alongside you. You'll hear themes around agents acting as true teammates, executing tasks, orchestrating workflows, and helping drive decisions in real time. You'll also hear an important tension that comes up again and again: how much autonomy we give these systems and where humans stay in the loop. It's not clearly defined yet. Because while agents can dramatically increase speed and scale, the real value still comes from human judgment, creativity, and relationships, and how you find and use AI and agents to be able to bring that more to life. There's no single definition of an agent. People talk about agents in many, many different ways. You hear a few different takes, but together, all of these people will point, all of my guests will point to something bigger. This isn't about replacing people. It's about redefining where people create the most value and then using agents to be able to amplify that. So as you listen, here's some food for thought. Where does your revenue engine today operate in the old model? And where can agents really start coming in to add value for you? This episode brings together the best moments of these conversations to give you a clear picture of where things are today, and also where they're heading. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I think we need to differentiate between an agent and AI-powered automation.
Okay. Interesting.
What I mean by that is, I hate to be the one to say it, but building an LLM workflow in Zapier is not an agent.
No.
Yeah, I think we've conflated the two words, which is whenever you're building a node in Zapier that makes an LLM call, like suddenly we call it an agent, and now we have hundreds of agents running for us and doing the smaller tasks. That's not what I call an agent. I call Waymo an agent. If you listen to Waymo's CEO, they will say we are building the world's safest driver. Like that's an agent. I think ChatGPT is an agent. Claude is an agent. An agent is that can do extremely complex tasks and can run through multiple variations or loops and get the job done. So I think in that vein, I would call one an agent. But if you're calling Zapier automations as agents, then I think we would call Vaughn or Waymo a super agent.
Got it. But I mean, really, that the bar for an agent is I'm doing something that a person would normally do that I can delegate to Vaughn or an AI agent that they'll do it. It isn't it's like I'm doing a task that a seller would normally do. Like you talked about, like I'm building a board deck. You would typically offload that to like a RevOps leader who would then go build all that stuff out and then build the deck for them. But what you're saying is I could just have Vaughn do that. So instead of a person doing it, a person's going to be reviewing it rather than writing it.
Yep. And maybe another way to say that is an agent should be able to spin up these sub agents to do the task. So an agent might spin up 100 sub agents or 100,000 sub agents. Eventually, what you are really care about is the task should get done. I don't care what happens in the background, and that is what a super agent like a Waymo or a ChatGPT or a Claude or a One should do, which is spin up its own sub agents to get the job done.
So like one of the things that always seems to break all this stuff is so Vaughn goes through all of your data and kind of builds all this stuff out. How does it handle the crappy data? So like that's always the limiter that you'll hear over and over and over is yeah, great. AI is great. I can do a lot of cool stuff, but my problem is my data isn't good enough. So I shouldn't even focus on an agent because I haven't done the hard work to be able to figure out how to get my data right so an agent could actually function properly. Like, how do you think about that in terms of like when you deploy this in a company, deploy Vaughn in a company?
I tell people it does not matter anymore.
Really?
Yeah. So where is crappy data in your system? So let's start with the first node, which is the actual data, which is buyer communication, your emails, your Slack
Yeah.
messages, your call recordings, maybe even seller notes. Like that's your actual data. Then crappy data exists when we ask humans to convert it into structured information in Salesforce. So your first level, your first node is not crappy data. Like it is just data. Your second node is crappy in Salesforce or in your CRM. And then you're trying to do some reporting or insights on this crappy data. But what I tell people is that any true advanced AI system will not connect to the second node. It will connect to the first node. So you bypass the whole process. You basically go from first node all the way to insights, and you don't have a crappy data issue anymore. Uh, so that's where I tell people it does not matter. What matters is, are you capturing your core data or not? Now, how do you capture your core data? Emails are automatically logged, so you don't have to worry about that. Slack messages are automatically logged. You don't have to worry about that. What is not automatically logged are the calls. So there are still a lot of companies that are not recording their calls or not transcribing their calls. To them, I say like, you have already lost last couple of years of data. You need to start now. And if you can't, then the only thing that you do is force your salespeople or your CSMs to take notes of every conversation. So at least we have that. But
Yeah.
I think as long as you have that, the whole messy data concept does not apply anymore.
That makes sense. So yeah, as long as you'll let the AI do the metadata, which is the update in fields that you ask a salesperson to do, and by doing that, you get consistent updates versus every seller kind of either doesn't do it at all or does it in their own odd way. So then everything cleans up over time on its own.
Yeah, but I would say yes, you should have AI update your Salesforce, but what will happen is that nobody will look at the data in Salesforce because no sales manager or sales leader or a CRO wants to go into every single opportunity and read mid-pick. They just want to understand, tell me deals that are late stage without a decision maker or without an economic buyer. So what I tell them is that if you ask AI will again go into your root data and it will get you the answer. Now, yes, you need this data in Salesforce for reporting, no doubt about that. You need stages, amount, close date, but AI will take care of all of this.
In doing that, you're hearing agents, 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 and when we were talking about that, like you had this analogy where you're like, yeah, agents are like the new dashboard. Where back in the day, everyone wanted a cool dashboard to make all their information visible, and now everyone has their own version of an agent to kind of do it, and the result is likely going to be the same. Where I'm going to have a bunch of crappy dashboards that nobody uses over time. If you keep just building agents and agents and you're just going to have a whole bunch of agents that nobody uses. Talk to me actually around, like, I think you use that as kind of like, I don't want to do this. How are you avoiding that with what you're doing with Vaughn?
Because Vaughn is a super agent. Vaughn will spin up its own agents. The analogy that I use is how many times have we both spoken to RevOps people where they will tell us that I hate when their CRO will ping them in Slack
Yeah.
or Teams and say, hey, can you give me this piece of information? And the RevOps guy says, I have created 20 dashboards for you. And I have sent them to you 20,000 times, and you're still asking me for the same dashboard again. Why does that happen? Because for the analogy is for the CRO or for a revenue leader, their RevOps person is that super agent. They don't have to they don't have to remember all the nitty gritties or the URLs or the business processes. They just go to this RevOps person and they can make a request, and the RevOps person decides, okay, where I'm gonna go for this piece of information. And I think what has happened is that because we have overused the word agents and we are calling AI powered automation agents, we have built hundreds of agents. And vendors are selling agents. And don't get me wrong, I was telling update your Salesforce agent and a risk agent, and I project with Rattle where we will build 30 of these agents, and each of these agents are doing their own thing. But then something breaks, and the person who built the agent has moved on, and now agents are the new dashboard.
Yeah.
Right? Like you suddenly have 10,000 dashboards and you don't know how you got to this point. That's why the concept of super agent is your super agent is just your RevOps person who understands what is happening in the background. So I can just do my job without worrying about the technical complexity.
Yeah, I like to give like a framing that I think will help people like sort of reconcile what's going on with that space. I'll try to be brief about it, but if you sort of imagine like a big circle that represents all value that can be had in generated in the world, and then inside of that circle is like another smaller circle that was like the value that humans could deliver themselves. And now there's like this new circle that is like the value that agents can deliver, and they overlap with the human circle, like kind of like a Venn diagram. And all the things that are getting attention is that shaded space in between the things that agents are starting to do that overlap with humans that are sort of taking the jobs away and et cetera. And like, oh, I'm worried about I'm not going to have a job and all this sort of thing. But if you just step back for a second, there's a really interesting dynamic that's happening. One, there's a whole bunch of stuff that only agents can do now. There's a whole bunch of value that they can generate that we couldn't generate before because they're able to work, around the clock, because they're able to scan large spaces of data and et cetera. And then there's like the part that is infringing upon our space. And yeah, there's contention. There's real issue there. But then there is this also interesting space that is just human. And I think that what's going on is that you'll realize the space that can be offloaded to the agents will get offloaded to the agents. You just can't compete on the labor dynamics there. But the things that are remaining for humans actually become like more and more important. So like the premia that of a human touch, if you will. And then there's the question of like, as an agent starts to capture this value, this additional value that was never had before, there's like the overall circle is growing very quickly. So there's just more value that can be had and captured in the world. And I think that those are like the sort of dynamics that are at play that help people sort of understand what's going on.
I think it's a really good way to phrase it, because if you think about like great situations where you're doing cool things that you want to do more of, you can almost never get all of that done. All the conversations that I wish I had more time to do X, I wish I had more time to do Y. This kind of enables that to actually, yeah, well, we're not doing that anymore. So spend more time on X, spend more time on Y. It's kind of almost it can almost be perceived as an age of abundance in that you're doing more of the truly great work and less of the work that you're kind of muddling along because you have to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of like, there's a dark side to all of that, but we don't have to get into that here. But there's a flip side of like like there's this age of abundance, but humans as a percentage are actually controlling a smaller and smaller portion of it. And then, of course, there's only so much human touch value that can be derived, period. So you obviously need less humans to be able to capture all of that value. So there's all these kinds of, complicated dynamics at play, but certainly interesting times to be alive. You do need to find people that have spent time to think about, like, how do we make this thing productive in the real world environment? How does it actually deliver value to your customers or to your own business? But then what you realize also is that like that is going to take some time. But the bigger thing is that even if that works, it's assume that you can, disrupt yourself or get these agents to be value generating in your company. What you realize very quickly is that all your other business processes need to be reimagined as well. Like, it doesn't make like, I kind of like the easiest way I would say is like, imagine that I can give you 1,000 employees right now. If you had 1,000 employees, you would work very, very differently than you do right now. And the problem is that because you don't have 1,000 employees, you're not thinking about how you should be working if you did. And it will take you some time to adapt all those other processes that actually have nothing to do with the agent's work that they're doing, but more about your ability to manage the work, the amount of work that is going to be done now. That just changes the whole business, all your business processes have to be rethought that way. And also the company cultures have to be rethought. All of that sort of thing, all of those sorts of things you need to be getting on them now because, if you wait until thinking, oh, I'll just plug this in later, it's not like that. It's not that kind of technology. It's really disruptive to the way you do work, not just the work that you do. We made bets on obviously that this was going to be the right move, but also we built it in a unique way. At the time, nobody was talking about knowledge graphs and grounding LLMs. Like that wasn't a thing at all. But because of my time at Bridgewater, I got to work with a very famous AI researcher named Dave Ferrucci that really impressed upon me the importance of knowledge representation and graph definitions and ontologies and this kind of thing. And so I sort of looked at LLMs and the transformer model and it's kind of like you're interpreting the mathematics, you're kind of reading the tea leaves of, is this going to be able to do proper reasoning? Is it going to be able to do what we call like multi-hop reasoning or complex reasoning? And our bet was like, no, this is actually not going to work that way. However, it could work if we can ground it in the domain, in more explicit domain knowledge. And so, 2 years ago, the first thing we built was actually we always had an ontology all along, but the first thing we built was the ontology that was built for an LLM to consume and be grounded in. And now just now people are starting to come around to the realization that, oh yeah, if you ground these things in knowledge graphs, they do a lot better. But even still, not everybody is doing that. Like Salesforce didn't start that way. I think Gong is now doing claiming that they have a graph and et cetera.
Well, they're calling it a revenue graph.
Right, exactly. So now everybody is real savvy on graphs, but 2 years ago, literally nobody was talking about that, which is crazy because we didn't invent that concept. That concept is as old as dust. Like it is the early 70s of people thinking about like how do you do knowledge engineering and graph constructs and ontology design and such. We were just bringing it to the forefront and bringing it to the to modern technology.
Very good and very good context. And while we were preparing for this session, like last week, I was thinking, what is the most innovative thing that I'm seeing in B2B right now? And it's not the tool. What I think is innovative is more of a redefinition of the seller role. From a seller operating AI tools to orchestrating AI intelligence. I have the fortune to be working with a lot of like forward-thinking companies, which realized something really important. Their sellers weren't struggling because they lacked data. They were struggling because they were overwhelmed by a lot of disconnected signals. And so instead of asking, how do I give my reps more AI, they started asking, how do we surround the seller with the intelligence that doesn't overwhelm them? And one of our customers at Spark is our annual conference. Last year, they presented their own approach. And they decided to surround the seller with domain-specific agents. One, for example, was focused on margins and deal economics. Another one was focusing on pipeline health and forecasting. Or another one was translating product updates into deal-ready messaging. All these agents were operating from the same trusted data foundation. And when this happens, the seller becomes the orchestrator. And so they spend less time in gathering information, and more time in thinking critically and thinking about how do I move the deal forward. And so thinking about your question, the biggest shift for me has been moving from thinking about the seller as an operator of agents to an orchestrator of agents.
That it's so timely. And when you say operator of agents, that's kind of like what a company would do when they're just asking a seller to do the same thing as they've done before with technology they've given to a seller. The orchestration side is these tools, like people need to start looking. I'm seeing the same thing, and it's kind of that. It's good you bring that up, because I think that's the limiter in a lot of companies, is they don't see it. They see it as a tool working for the seller instead of the seller orchestrating around them. And you almost have to look at your sales world now, not as a bunch of just sellers, but sellers and agents making up your entire execution engine. What's the biggest challenge that you run into in enterprise organizations when trying to deploy an agent to a go-to-market team or a sales team?
Actually, this is one of the questions that I'm hearing more and more. And the biggest challenge of deploying the agents isn't the agent or the technical implementation itself, is the data quality, as I said, and the clarity of the use case. Because as we said, the agents learn from data, they act on context. And if your data, for example, is fragmented, or the definitions are inconsistent, or the systems are disconnected, the agent doesn't become intelligent. It's actually very confused, and it becomes unreliable. And that's when you lose the trust of the field. But the other challenge that you see is a lack of focus. There are some companies that are trying to build agents for everyone. And if you build an agent for everyone, you build it for no one. So the real question, when these companies ask, can we deploy an agent? I want them to move to the other question, which is, what performance problem are we solving for here? And do we have the operational maturity to support it? And so you might ask me, actually, do I need to get to a certain operational maturity before I'm able to deploy an agent? And the answer is no. For example, there are the agents you were talking before, like the role-based agents. This is straightforward. For example, you can ask an agent to archive all the content that has not been seen in the last 90 days, for example. Really easy. But if you want agents to recommend the next best actions in complex deals, or you want them to really guide the seller on the next steps, that requires clean data, aligned processes and methodologies, and shared definition.
It's everybody you ask, it's going to be very different. And agent washing is a thing, right? Like every AI in the product is now being called an agent. Is that really the case? The way we look at it is agents are not just chatbots, right? They're not just like, hey, I ask something, I get a response. Agents have to have a sense of autonomy. Agents have to be able to complete tasks on behalf of the user. So they should be able to take a series of actions in the path of the task, or even a workflow, like an end-to-end workflow that it can orchestrate on behalf of the seller. So the way we look at agents, as I said, there could be task-based agents, which are very simple agents. I can complete one task at a time. It will summarize. It will create an email. Those are individual tasks that the agent is automating for you. But it could be the entire workflow, right? I can basically take an entire sales play, and the AI is conducting that sales play. It could be your outbound motion. It could be your inbound motion. So multiple steps in that workflow could be fully orchestrated by AI. But I think for us, again, what's the step we have taken is you have to be very careful in how much autonomy you give to the agent. And that depends on the use case you have. So we have given you all the controls, all the flexibility for the autonomy versus human in the loop. But depending on the use case, we see our customers kind of determining when to turn up that level of autonomy versus no, this is a strategic customer. I never want this workflow to be autonomous. It can still do a lot of legwork, but let the seller review what it's going to communicate to the customer. So there's a lot of those things, but I think to me, the agent is really completing work on behalf of the seller. That's how I look at an agent versus.
Yeah, just asking a question, getting an answer. It's actually doing the work with you. And it's, I mean, we talked about this. You guys have been very laser focused on the agent concept. I would say just like that part more than anybody. So as you have like brought that and looked at bringing that to life, he walked through what you think that you're doing and what you've learned since you started so early on this that is different and unique to other. You talked a little bit about it, which I don't want to underestimate some of the things you talked about with controls, because that is kind of where it's at, right? Like you can build an agent that can just go do anything you want. No enterprise organization is going to let you deploy that. So you touched on it, but I just want to double click, or I just want to emphasize what you said. That control lever, the control panel that you're putting in place behind the scenes is what's going to make this, or at least my perception is what's going to make this enterprise ready. Because if you don't have the ability to do that, it's going to be challenging. But in addition to that, like what are some of the things that you're doing today that you think are a step ahead, that are unique, that are adding value, that you've gotten from this advantage that you've had by starting so early?
Yeah, as you said, I think our focus right from the beginning, as we got on this journey, especially in the last year where we've gone really deep, is that autonomous agents
Yep.
that we can bring to your. And our focus is to make sure that the agents are delivering the right actions to the sellers at the right time. Like that's kind of at a high level, very simple framing. And it's orchestrating all these workflows to bring those actions. What do I mean by that? These could be different type of sales motions, right? You can run your entire outbound. The industry calls this AI SDR. But for us, that's one use case of our autonomous agent and AI SDR. So you're targeting it to your specific ICP, can go find prospects in that ICP, can research them, generate that highly personalized, relevant outbound messaging. It's all done by AI. And at the end of it, again, you have the choice because I think the advantage Outreach has had is we have thought about automation so deeply since the beginning of Outreach, right? Because that was our core. So we already had these knobs where the human can intercept through our cadences and sequences. And so you can say, this email is personalized, it goes into the seller's inbox, or this email can be fully automated. Like we had that flexibility already in the platform, except AI is coming and helping you at every step of the way now, right? So that's just one use case. I think it's another use case is inbound. Like you have an inbound lead coming in. Again, I automatically research that inbound lead. And I have to say inbound lead is probably the biggest use case where it's getting fully autonomous because it's intent. So there's more comfort because you know what the user is looking for, so you can target them more effectively and make it fully autonomous. Speed to lead matters. So in fact, even in our internal implementation, we were writing the messages for the sellers, and then it was still sitting in a seller's queue, and then we checked those messages, and they were amazing. And again, our CRO said, why is it even sitting in the seller's queue? Just send it. And the results were incredible. I mean, you as a user really don't even care about the data, honestly.
You just want it there.
Yeah. So all I need is the action, right? Like is the action, and the action could be done autonomously or the action can be brought to me. So that is our focus. Like we harvest all the data and the signal. We orchestrate it via our agents and we deliver the action to the seller. So this is it. It's simple. It's like our focus is an AI that acts. It's not about AI that answers, AI that gives insights. I think that's still a lot of work for the seller to go sift through that. We simply get you to what you need to do.
Makes total sense. So let's expand on that a little bit. When you think about like all these agents are going to be working alongside sellers and enhancing, in some places, optimizing, providing capacity, and others, what do you think the core job of the seller is going to be in the future when these things are fully deployed and working with the salesperson to help them sell? Like, what's that core job that still is going to be what they are doing to make a difference with their customers?
Again, when I take that example of coding and revenue, it's very different. These are very different use cases. Coding, pattern recognition, you can do the same thing and get the same results. Sales is touching people, touching humans. So you probably are not going to get the same result, even if I do the exact same thing with a very similar person, right? So this is where the seller's creativity, the seller's judgment, the seller's ability to build relationships is still really, really essential. Like AI can do a lot of that legwork, but what you do with it is really where the seller is still going to be the pretty critical part. Otherwise, you're not going to see the success you need to see by just letting AI do everything that you need. And the other thing is AI cannot look around the edges, right? Like, information about your deal, about your buying committee, right? So they see information. I'll take example from my own sellers, like my own best sellers at Outreach, what they do, right? They're coming to me, hey, or coming to Nithya and saying, oh, these are the current people in the deal, but I don't think I'm at the right level. That's not the kind of information he has. And who should be that right person? How do I break into this account? And how do I build more influence? What is the path to get around this blocker, which it was not evident from the data I have, right? Like, these are the things they are getting ahead of. They're thinking through it. And those are the sellers, right? That kind of skill set is where the sellers are absolutely critical. And, their value is going to be in that. And it also gives them more time. I think the beauty of AI is because it takes the legwork off their plate, they can spend more time doing that, which is what's going to get you to the outcome you're looking for.
Yeah, it's going to be, and I mean, those things you said are what makes great sellers. And I think to a certain extent, the capacity that they have to do that is limited by all of the problems they have.
Yeah, all that grunt work, and they really are not able to do the strategic work, right? Like, this is the strategic work.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, like, how that works, because everyone thinks of, I'm going to do AI and it just does my job for me. But that's not the way the world's going to work if you're talking to another person, because you don't know what they're going to say. So whatever they say, you have to pivot. Yeah, that makes total sense.
The one other thing, as I'm thinking about this, is also, right, where is AI learning from?
And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at innovativerevenueleader.ai. The Innovative Revenue Leader is sponsored by Sandler, a Trilliad company. Sandler provides top corporate sales and business development training while empowering sales professionals and leaders to master the craft of selling at all levels.